know that you did this in grade 11, but revising this can help you refine your skills and strategies.
Firstly, on your own, reflect on your past exam experiences. Which ones were successful and which ones weren't?
The secret to writing a good examination is in the preparation.
Yes, start studying long before the time. Don't try to cram in everything just before your exam.
An effective way to study is to prepare mind maps, take effective notes, prepare diagrams during the course of the year, and use them to remind you of the work you've already learned.
Make sure that you have adequate sleep the night before an examination.
And on the morning before the exam, eat a healthy breakfast and drink lots of water.
I'm sure that you've heard these suggestions many times before, but have you internalized them, and do you actually use them?
The following checklist should be able to assist you. Preparation checklist. Have I set the goals for these exams? Do I know exactly which work I need to study? Is all my work up to date? Have I made a study timetable? Have I planned how much work I aim to cover in each study session? Have I allowed time for breaks in each study session? Have I allowed enough time to cover the work I need to know? Am I summarizing and making notes while I study? Am I keeping to my plan? Have I obtained past exam papers and revision questions to work through? Am I getting sufficient sleep? Am I eating well? Am I exercising every day? Do I know the date, time, and length of my exam?
Obviously, the more yes answers you have, the better prepared you are.
So now that you are prepared and the day of the exam arrives, let's see what the expert has to say about the exams.
I think my first skill would be, especially high school and matric exams. You're not going to get true and false questions and fill in the missing word and all these short questions. You're going to get pretty long paper. The first thing you do, before you even write your name on it, is scan your eyes over that page, over that whole paper, from the beginning to the end, and take your pencil and emphasize things. For example, you read one question and you can see you know that. Star it to answer it first. Go to the rest. Oh, and you pick out a word saying compare. Maybe that was asked in a question, or criticize, or relate, or discuss. And underline that word, because we need to know what they're asking to answer it. And so often we'll end up spending an hour writing an answer to a question that they didn't ask, because we didn't read the question properly. So when you're going through the paper, underline things to make you remember, oh, they're asking me to compare this. Underline the word compare. Go through the paper and see what you know, because then you write your name on the paper and then you don't start from question 1. You go to all the ones where you start and you answer all the easy ones first, so that when you run out of time, you've at least got 50% of it, of what you can get right. Also, I think also when you first sit down to write an exam, once you've been through that whole paper, when you're writing your question, look at the mark allocation. If they're asking you a question for 10 marks, or if they're asking you a question for 100 marks, you can't put the same amount of time into each question. And many times you say, oh, I know the answer to that 10-mark question, and you end up writing everything. But actually, it's not what your teacher was asking you, what the examiner was asking you. So while you're writing, keep referring back to the question. What are they asking me? Also, when you're writing it, try and write in clear, concise paragraphs. An examiner who's writing, and I know as a history teacher, I used to mark pages and pages of work. Examiner who's marking your paper, who is tired, and they are trying to look for answers for you. They want to look at clear, concise paragraphs. They don't want to scan through pages and pages of work trying to find your answers. And then the third thing, which I always think is so important, is making it neat. I know it's hard when you're writing exams, but again, tired eyes who are marking a paper, and remember that yours might be that last paper that history teacher or whatever is marking. They are not going to try and read your writing to give you an answer. The neater you can write it, and the simplest form of writing, that teacher's going to find you marks. So keep it concise, keep it clear, keep it in paragraphs, but keep going back to the answer so that you don't waffle and go off the point. And then the last point, I also think when you're writing an exam, very important, you might have written all the right things and everything you've studied for put in, and then this the sort of being ambiguous. You will contradict yourself completely because you think there's something that you know, and I'll put it in anyway, I might get a note, might get an extra mark. Examiner's going to put a line through it. You would have read it all, you've contradicted yourself, the whole thing is, so be very careful with contradicting yourself, and especially essay type questions, because you've actually wasted then all the good stuff that you've written. Yes, I do, but I think it's one way. I think it's part of a process. I think as a teacher, you watch your pupils throughout the year, their projects, their assignments, their classwork, even their participation in class, their orals, their discussions and speeches and things like that. But I do believe that as a written way, yes, I think it's a good way. But you're going to get the pupils who are not very good at exam writing. They are the stressed ones. They go blank, they forget. And then you can't just use that. That's when I then fall back, and a lot of teachers do fall back on what they did throughout the year. A lot of them do oral examinations. I remember I was testing a pupil who'd broken his arm and he couldn't write. We did it all orally and he soared through it orally. But as soon as he had to write something down, it was that whole exam stress of writing and fitting it in. Chatting freely, I could see he understood the info. So I think it's one way of part of a process of, it's an important way. It's a good way for us teachers to see how they're actually achieving.
That certainly was insightful. Just a few exam reminders. Remember to read your instructions very carefully during your examination.
Draw a quick mind map or write down keywords that relate to the question.
Choose the problem or question that's easiest for you and make sure you do that first.
Remain calm if you're stressed out. Put down your pen, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and consciously relax any muscles that you may be clenching.
One of the most important things in writing exams is interpreting the question and then deciding exactly what it is that you must do.
The more you practice with revision questions, the easier it will become.
As discussed in the introductory episodes, you do not write exams for life orientation, but you are assessed continuously throughout the year.
Continuous assessment enables your teacher to establish whether you are competent or not yet competent in any piece of work.
Continuous assessment helps you to become responsible for your own learning and also assists you in developing your personal potential.
You're required to do research projects to gather all the relevant supplementary evidence.
There are different forms of assessment, and these can be undertaken by your peers, your teacher, and through self-evaluation.
All tasks, informal class tasks, formal tasks, collection of evidence, and practical assessment tasks should be approached with enthusiasm and dedication.
Your success and ultimately your final certificate will be dependent upon your personal study plan and its implementation, your exam writing skills, and your continuous assessment work or collection of evidence.
Let's recap. In this lesson, you've revised your study skills, your strategies, and your styles.
And you reflected on your exam writing skills.
And you've developed your own study method and devised your own study plan.
And you looked at the role and process of continuous assessment in developing your personal potential.
We will be revisiting these concepts in a later episodes before you write your exams.
But although exams seem a far way off, you really do need to start preparing now.
In the next episode, we will continue talking about Learning Outcome 4.
Bye for now.
Cheers!
Summary. In this lesson you learned to create a study plan, about appropriate study skills, about exam preparation, about writing techniques, to think about assessment.
Learning Channel offers an extensive educational collection ranging from grades 8 to 12 in alignment with the National Curriculum Statement. We offer DVD and workbook sets in a number of different subjects. To buy the Learning Channel series, check out our website on www.learn.co.za or call us on 011 639 0179.